Hello everyone and welcome to this edition of the Cheat Meal presented by Deep Fried Draft. My name is Brian Bosarge. It's been a while since you've heard from me, but it is the slow time of the draft season as we all are getting ready for the 2018 NFL draft to head our way, and as we're getting ready for the college football season and the NFL season to start. So that's where we are. I don't think I've recorded a video of any note since the draft review series, which I want to thank you for. You made it a huge success. Um, it's probably one of the largest viewed things that I've done. Definitely the largest viewed as a whole series that I've done for the Deep Fried Draft YouTube channel. I especially want to thank the New Orleans Saints fans out there because that particular video was easily the most watched of the 32 team breakdown videos that I did. What have I been doing? Well, if you haven't been checking out deepfrieddraft.com, I'll drop a link down below for you to click here. But we've got some DFD recipes for the cookbook there already. We've got 6 of them up so far. For players that'll be eligible for the 2018 draft. We got 3 quarterbacks: Josh Allen from Wyoming, Lamar Jackson from Louisville, and Logan Woodside from Toledo. Got reviews up of all 3 of those guys. Wide receiver Cortland Sutton from SMU, tight end Hayden Hurst from South Carolina, and edge rusher Xavier Thigpen from Southern Mississippi. I've got a list of 27 more players that I would like to do before the season. I don't know if I'll get to all 27 of them, but I have a list of those guys. I'll definitely have more between now and the season. Some news to touch on from the last time we talked. It appeared Oklahoma's head coach Bob Stoops stepped down, citing it was just time to be away from the program. And they promoted offensive coordinator Lincoln Riley, who now becomes the youngest head coach at the FBS level. Since I know for a fact Lincoln Riley probably could have been a head coach at least 4 to 5 schools in the last couple of seasons, this strikes me as a move that's been in place for a little while now, just wasn't made public with a coach in waiting type deal. That was the in vogue thing a while back. But this strikes me as something that's been in place in Norman for a few years, or at least a year, maybe longer than that. I think Lincoln Riley's going to be just fine. He's one of the guys that when South Carolina was looking for a head coach, he was the guy I was hoping they would consider just for the offensive fireworks that he can put together with his scheme. Some NFL news to get to. There was a few rule changes put in place. They shortened overtime from 15 to 10 minutes. I don't really think that's going to make much of a difference, if anything. But the one that struck me and that definitely affects draft prospects and the like is the cut down. There's normally been 2 cut down days. Teams have a 90-man roster, and after the 3rd week of preseason, they would cut that roster from 90 to 75. And then after the final preseason game, they would cut the roster from 75 to 53. Well, now they've just axed the 75 cut. And so now after the last preseason game, teams will cut their rosters from 90 to 53. Yikes. That is going to be a lot of players unemployed at one time. So, that being said, it's always crazy because the final cut down day is always the first full week of college football. So it's like one of the busiest days of the year for me personally, because I'm trying to keep up with all the cuts and trying to watch what's usually been a great array of games, and this year won't be any exception to that. That opening week of college football. So, but what it's good for the teams, I think, from this perspective, is that now I think it will be easier for teams to get players that they really want to keep on the practice squad to the practice squad, because it's just so many names are going to be on the waiver wire at one time. I just feel like it's going to be hard for teams to sift through all that. And so I think teams will be able to get guys that they want onto their 10-man practice squad. Another rule that I like that they changed was up for the last couple of years, you've been able to designate one player as injured reserve to return. Now you can do that with 2 players. This would have helped the Bengals out immensely last year, but that's neither here nor there. A couple of milestone dates coming up. August 3rd is the NFL Hall of Fame game, which means that's the opening of the NFL preseason. Training camps will probably start a week before that. The Cardinals and Cowboys are playing in a Hall of Fame game this year, and it's on a Thursday night, which I thought was odd. But that's only 5 weeks from Thursday, so it's going to be here before we know it. And I know we're all ready for that. What they're calling week 0 in college football. And the last couple of years, they've always had one FCS game and one. And last year there was one FBS game that was played in Australia. Well, this year there's 8 or 9 games in week 0. A few of them with FCS teams, but more FBS teams got involved in that this year. And that is a little less than 10 weeks away. So the football grind is going to be here before we know it, folks, and I'm ready. A lot of the networks have released their schedules for the first 3 to 4 weeks of the season. So still waiting on some scragglers. They haven't announced the SEC network games, and a few other networks haven't announced their games for the first few weeks. But I can almost start finalizing my watch schedule for the first 3 or 4 weeks, and that kind of gets me I get a little excited about that, because that's when I start looking at the list of players that I have on my 2018 draft watch list, and I try to start matching up, and maximize games that I watch each week to get the most out of the tape that I record of these games, so I can go back and study these prospects. And it's also these first few weeks when you have a lot of the FCS versus FBS matchups, it's generally the paycheck games for these schools. But I like it from a fact that if there's a prospect at an FCS school and they're playing a game against, a bigger SEC opponent, I'll just use an example. Last year, there was a few Jacksonville State players I wanted to watch. They played LSU in the second game of the season. That's a record game for me because I want to see what these Jacksonville State players can do against LSU, So it's just like when North Dakota State plays their what has been generally a annual game against an FBS opponent. I like to watch that game because I like to see whatever prospects they have and how they perform against players that are perceived of higher talent. So I try to watch those games when I can, and of course, the big matchups. You want to watch those because there's just so much talent on the field. You can just better believe that any draft analyst worth his salt will be watching Alabama and Florida State because there's going to be so many players. Maybe not for the 18 draft, but for draft classes in the future, there's going to be so many players on that field that are going to play in the NFL. So definitely watching that game opening week. But as the schedule comes out fully and I get a grasp of that, I'll do a video, and go over, kind of what games I'm going to narrow it down to. The first week, because the games start on Thursday and go through Monday, I generally like to watch 18 to 20 games that weekend. So that first week is always the big week for me as far as quantity goes. And after that, I watch 10 games a week going forward. But I'll do a video on the schedule and game choice process that I make and why I made the choices that I made when I see the final schedule. So that's going to do it for today. As always, follow me on Twitter at DeepFriedDraft. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/DeepFriedDraft. Download the Bumpers app in the Android or the iTunes store and search my name, Brian Bosarge, on there. subscribe and listen to the podcast that I do. Follow me here on YouTube, hit subscribe, and watch all of my videos that I post in the past and going forward. So, thanks for watching, everybody. Until next time, see ya.